Okay, so thank you, Kim and Alex, for coming and being a part of this. This is the Norco Library, where this program is mainly a California Humanities grant funded program. And what we're trying to do is build a little archive here at the Norco Library to focus in on BIPOC-centered history. So we're kind of holding these events to kind of propagate that and build a foundation for it. So thank you for being a part of this. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Jamie to start off the Q&A session.
So my first question for you guys is, what was it like to be around the Parkland students at the height of their press coverage?
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, for me personally, at first it was a little overwhelming. When you think about that, like coming from inner city, Chicago especially, and going out to Florida and instantly being bum rushed with different cameras and everything like that. I'm not used to that. I was never used to that. But as a kid, I was told that I was a spotlight kind of kid, you feel me? Like I always had the face or the humor for to be on in front of a camera or anything like that. But it was never really that for me. All I was trying to do at that time was be that shoulder to cry on, you feel me? So they were going through a traumatic experience at the time. I'm used to going through traumatic experiences. I see gun violence, I see violence in general to a day-to-day basis. So to that to have happened in a place where it is not known for being violent, extremely violent, to have just a wave of violence, of trauma just hit the community. It relieved me. It made me feel good to be able to actually sit down and just be that shoulder, be that relief system. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. So to be that guy, it was overwhelming, but it was a wonderful feeling at the same time for me.
You'd like me to respond to that as well?
Yes, please.
Sure. Thanks for having us, by the way. You know, it was interesting because we started documenting things in Parkland very shortly after the shooting. And it sort of started to grow like a flame. First, it was busloads of kids led by students in Parkland who went up to the state capitol. And then they were joined by college students, and we were there with our cameras sort of by chance that day. And then when they took to the road, started their summer Road to Change tour, that's where we first met Alex in his home turf of Chicago. And I remember that night was just something really historically memorable, where it was just all kinds of people getting together, marching through neighborhoods in Chicago. And it really felt like something different. And I think along the way, over those 2 months of documenting things, you know, on one hand, it was really inspiring and heartening. And on the other hand, we were aware and respectful of the kids who initiated it in Parkland, who had organically already teamed up with Alex from afar. You see that in the film. We respected and were aware that they really wanted to shine the light on this doesn't just happen in places like Parkland with mass shootings, which only make up like 2%, but get the majority of the press. And so not only do the shootings get 2% of the press, but on the road, some of the figures that you know in the film insisted they had a sort of policy that they wouldn't do interviews by themselves because they know the media kind of was seizing on, we want those kids. And so they always would insist that they did an interview side by side with someone like Alex, someone from the local community who's been in this fight for a long time, someone of color. So we were really respectful of that, but it really did, seeing it day in and a day out and see those media requests that were often like, can we get David Hogg, you know, like the kids that were more famous. It was nice to see them continuing to try to control their own narrative and sometimes saying, no, we don't want to do it that way. We want to do it this way.
So,
Thank you for your response.
so the next question that we have is, how do you keep calm in hostile environments, especially as we saw in the film, when dealing with death threats, either to yourself or to the people around you? How do you keep your cool?
I just want to say in advance, I'm sorry if I get muted and it's still moving in the background. I'm just trying to adjust while I'm still at work. But to answer your question, I say you have to do what you like to do. You have to take time for yourself. At the end of the day, we all know activism work is a lot of work. It isn't easy. It's an everyday thing. You don't just get to put it down like, okay, I'll try again next year or something like that. But just as I say that you can't put it down, you can give it a break. It's a lot of work. It's hard work, but it's never the only work. If you get what I'm saying. And what I mean by that is, this shouldn't be the only thing that's on your plate. Whenever you feel stressed, overwhelmed, take the time and dig back into your past and do something that you like to do. Me personally, I like music. I can sit and put on an instrumental and just listen to the beats all day, every day. Or I'll cook whenever I feel like life is getting the best of me. So it's taking those times out for yourself and actually knowing when you're being overwhelmed, knowing when you're pushing yourself to the limit, and understanding that whenever I take it as, if you're not getting a death threat, if you're not getting threatened, you're not doing something right. So I always look at that as a smack on the back telling me, hey, keep going. This is the right path. If nobody's criticizing you, you're not doing something right. You're never gonna have 100% of the world on your side. But as long as we get the understanding of 100% of the world, you feel me? Not just, everybody doesn't have to agree with you, but as long as they're willing to sit down and have those conversations with you, and at the end of those conversations can say, okay, we can agree to disagree, or okay, I felt two of the points that you gave out were valid, or I like this from your statement, you like this from my statement, just coming together and coming to common ground, having common understanding with one another, and take it day by day, literally day by day.
Thank you. And Kim, if you want to.
Yes, you know, I had made the film, this film Newtown, that preceded this, and so I already was in a position to watch people who I was documenting who become good friends, who had their children murdered, you know, have to bear with people who say it never happened. You know, people who accuse them of being actors and crisis actors. And so that would, you know, definitely at times make me lose my cool. That really, I remember one time I was somewhere and a woman afterwards basically said, oh, so you know these people and you really believe that happened? You know, I think it's bullshit. And that was like, the first time that I felt like this red rage come up, and I sort of had to leave the table and collect myself. But, you know, and then when I got into working on Us Kids, I just basically would watch the grace of Alex and some of the other folks you saw and how they handled these things when you watch the film. And I would take their lead, you know, I'd just be like, you know, they were modeling. I often said they were modeling for the adult world, which is now so much divisiveness. They were modeling what a better world could be.
Thank you for your response. My next question for you is, what would you say to young people who feel unacknowledged or unaccounted for?
I will first tell them, as long as you have a voice, you have power. You are accounted for. Um, Educate yourself. If you don't know the 100%, if you don't know all the facts that you are talking about, educate yourself on it. There's nothing wrong with not knowing. I tell first and foremost, there's nothing wrong with not knowing, but it's the fact of finding out, get that information. I'll say it again, as long as you have a voice, you have power, use that voice. If I know a lot of people think that we sit and talk about how voting is the number one thing. You have to vote, 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 vote. You have to understand we have a lot of children that are too young to vote. So when you're too young to vote, what do? You educate those around you until you are old enough to vote. You gather troops. You help out in any way that you can when you can't vote.
My response, quick response is hopefully if you saw that's what the whole point of the film is if a number of high schoolers within days could, or in 45 days could pull off the largest youth protest in American history through sheer will and the power of social media, then that's what this sort of illustrates, right? It's remarkable. It did happen. And I'll just tell one quick little story that kind of highlights this point. So before they did that, within days in Florida, which had pretty loose gun laws, they did get one thing pushed through, which was called the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act, which raised the age for people to have guns from 18 to 21. And it also put a holding period of 72 hours if someone buys a gun between that and when they could get the gun. So it seemed like a small thing for them at the time. They wanted, lots to happen. They wanted to ban assault weapons and all kinds of stuff. But they got that done, and that was 4 years ago. Well, almost exactly 4 years later to the day, my own niece, who was at school in Florida, had a threat on her campus by a young student who texted someone saying, "I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to shoot myself, I'm going to shoot up the school." And then they couldn't, he was sort of out there, but the kid reported that. And they found out that he had indeed gone out and bought a semi-automatic weapon that morning. So they knew he was serious. Well, had that law that the kids that you just saw in the film not been passed, he would have had that gun and very likely have executed that. But because of the 72 hours, he didn't walk out with that gun. And when you think that there isn't power, or that sometimes, not all times, but sometimes things can be averted, I said to them on that day, it was sort of the anniversary of the shooting. I said, "You know what? You likely saved the life of my own niece because of what you did within days of that shooting." And Alex, when he got up and spoke in honor of his own nephew in front of 1 million people, you just think of how many young people that inspired to feel powerful. I mean, Alex, did you ever think you would be standing in front of 1 million people with a voice and a microphone? It wasn't 1 million, 6 continents. It was only 1 million in person, right?
Only in my dreams. Only in my dreams. I've never. Like I said, I didn't expect to be bum rushed and be put in front of cameras. Out of my 18 years of living, I was 18 at the time. So to actually be in Washington, D.C. and to be in front of 1 million people, I tell the story a lot. Like, I didn't have goosebumps while I was on the stage, but when I got off the stage, I was shook and I'm, whoa, I really just did that. I just talked to 1 million people. Okay, that's cool. What's next? Let's go. So I know if I was motivated by that, I know I motivated a lot of younger, especially people of color, young men of color, women of color too. You see, it was a lot of different diversity on this tour. In the movie, you can see that as well. And I thank Kim for that, putting this piece together. It was just wonderful all around.
So our next question is, you guys have already kind of alluded to this, both in the film and within these questions, but what helps you stay committed to your cause?
Alex does for me. I'll let him. Alex, and keeping in, seriously, keeping in touch with these guys is when I'm feeling demoralized. You know, I need a hit. I need a weekend. I just spent a weekend with Samantha, who you met. We went on a little road trip, showed the film in Albany, and that it reinvigorates me to keep going.
I want to say every time that I open one of my social media apps and I'm being tagged in something inspirational, or I'm being shown something of me, it's like, and it puts a smile on someone else's face. And me personally, I've been affected by this. I've lost family members to gun violence, so it will always be with me. It will always hold a place in my heart. I've been doing this work since 2014, since I was in high school with the Peace Warrior organization, one of the organizations that I was a part of in high school that does the same thing around this work, or around gun violence in particular. So just that, some days I wake up and I think about my nephew, and I go to a dark place for a second. But knowing that I have people that look up to me, it pushes me back into positivity, that right state of mind. Saying that I'm no longer working for me, but I'm working for those who can no longer work because their lives were lost. I'm working for those who don't have the confidence to get up and do these Zoom interviews, to step up on camera. Everybody isn't, I want to say, everybody isn't fond of being in front of cameras. Everybody isn't fond of talking in front of groups. If you can't do that, do what you're best at. Write, record, do what makes you comfortable. So, but I feel like with me, losing my nephew, losing people to this line of work is going to always push me there. And then knowing that I'm an inspiration to others keeps me going.
I'd like to know, are there any projects or organizations you want people to be aware
of? Yes. Touch base back to Peace Warrior organization that I've been in since I was in high school at North Lundale College Prep. They do things around gun violence like condolence runs. So if you lose anybody in your family and you go to the school and the school hears about it, knows about it, we get everybody from your class level, your teachers, your deans, whoever. We have them all sign a card. We give you a goodie bag of candies and we pull you out of your advisory class. We don't like to make a scene, but we pull you out of your advisory class and let you know that we're all in this together. When one hurts, we all hurt. We know that you lost somebody. If you need to talk to somebody, we are that group of people. Because I know me personally, when I went through losing my nephew, I couldn't talk to my parents. I couldn't talk to my brothers. They were much older and things like that. But in school, I had a group of friends that I could always go to and tell them everything. And I feel like with that support system, it helps, takes us out of so many dark paths. But not only that, you got Brave Youth Leaders. That's another Chicago organization. Mr. Trey, that's my man now. He was on the tour with us as well. So he has a nice little group out at St. Sabina Church, Brave Youth Leaders. And it's a bunch more that I can't get into the name of. Communities United, things like that, trying to keep the community together. It's a lot of communities out here a lot of organizations that we can shed light on. I feel like that's another thing that we have to do too. Everybody has some form of social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, this, that, and the third. We are quick to promote or show violence but we're less likely to promote small businesses that's creating change inside our community, that's doing good for our community, that's doing food drive, clothes drive, things of that nature. So I encourage everybody, when you see something like that in your community, take a picture, have a conversation, record, and put it on your platform, share light to it. The more light you share, the more light that it gets. Just so people can know that they have these safe spaces to go to when they feel like they have nowhere to go.
For me, I guess in terms of advocating, aside from the great grassroots on the ground stuff that Alex is talking about, March for Our Lives continues to do important work across the country, especially with youth. I also am, I think yesterday, a lot of people know, it was yesterday, the day before, the president did announce an executive order that had to do with background checks on ghost guns, but there's a long way to go. So the pressure has to be kept up there are things, as frustrated as some people may be on congressional inaction. There are things to keep pressing the executive office, the president, to try to do in terms of executive orders. It's really important to vote in the midterms. That's like a big thing because, our friend David will always point this out. Even if you are demoralized and don't decide for whatever reason, you just don't want to vote at the top of the ballot, voting down ballot is becoming increasingly your school boards. These are people who actually make decisions that can affect your own environment right around you. And so those things really matter to show up in the midterms and to really educate yourself about how gun violence affects you, and don't wait for it to happen to you or someone the voting is really important. And look, the midterms, as you saw in the film, that was the highest turnout of youth voter turnout in history. And most of what happened because of young people of color in cities like Atlanta and Chicago and Philadelphia. Well, Chicago didn't, but Philadelphia, Atlanta, some of those places. So we can't afford to lose that and it's one of the things we want to continue to do with the film, because we feel like the film speaks as much to youth civic engagement as it does to the issue of guns.
So the next question we have, so as leaders with experience in the fields of both film and activism, what would you say to leaders now who may be at the beginning of their own leadership journey in whatever path they choose?
What I would say now that it's easy to lead now. Like, we have so many different platforms that's shooting up, that's been around for a while, like TikTok. That's one I'm just now getting used to it. Like, I heard about it last year, but apparently it's been around for a while. But just like I'm saying here, that we can use these platforms to spread positivity. Never be afraid to take that first step. I know we have that a lot too, especially within my community and everything, within my high school. Like, a lot of people, when they heard about the Parkland, Florida incident, they weren't so eager to take that flight down to Florida and have the conversation with the students right after the shooting and everything like that. Me personally, I was ready to go. I want to say it was February, so I know it was snow on the ground here in Chicago and it was warm out in Parkland. So that was one reason I was ready. But then too, I'm always big on caring for others. So once I heard about the situation, I was ready to just be the shoulder to lean on. things are like that. So what I mean is, what I'm trying to say, let me sum it all up, is sometimes you have to take that first step. You have to take that leap of faith and you have to run with it. But with all the platforms, with the ways that we can bring amounts of attention, the ways that we can grab views, we can grab numbers of people in minutes through social media. And that's just one way. But taking advantage of these platforms, taking advantage of the spotlight that you are given and spreading a positive light to the world. We just need to continue to do that, spread more positivity. We have the platform, we have the space to do so, we just have to do it.
Well, for me as a storyteller, and since we are in a setting of a library, it occurred to me because I'm actually, well, it's a little bit under wraps, but I started a new project that has to do with this wave of book banning that we've been seeing around the country. So it has very much to do with libraries. And one of the things that came up, if I can take some creative license, I will quote, I just pulled it up, the beloved and great Toni Morrison, author Toni Morrison. And she wrote it about a book, but I would say the same thing about as a storyteller and a filmmaker. So I'll change the word book to film. If there's a film you want to see, but it hasn't been made yet, then you must make it. Don't be afraid to be a trendsetter. If there's a change you want to see in the world and you don't see anyone doing it yet, take action. So it's that idea, you got to see what's not out there. What, you could say, oh, it's fatigue. There's been all these, I go through all the time. There's all these films on guns and, things, but there's always a new way in. There's always something where it didn't, I was so proud when I made the film Newtown. One of the things I was proud of is that it was a very different kind of thing than Us Kids, but I had sometimes at screenings, guys come up to me who said, I'm an NRA member and you're going to reach guys like me because this has made me think about it differently. And that was like some of the things I really remember. It's easy to preach to the choir and that is a good thing, but it's always important to not stop thinking that you can get through and find common ground, just the way David did in that scene that we saw in Texas. So that's I guess that's what I would say is, and storytelling is, so powerful. It's been powerful since, the beginning of time, since the cavemen. And so I continue to think it's one of the most sacred ways to share humanity and get word out.
Thank you. Our last question for you is going to be, how would you like an institution like the library to support the communities that are important to you?
Yeah, that is one of those questions. Let's see. For one, I just want to say continuing to do things such as this. This is great, by the way. A lot of people don't have the, what I want to say, I'm tired of saying spotlights. A lot of people don't have these opportunities to take Zoom calls to even express or share the ideas that they have, the organizations that they work with. So taking the time out of you guys' day just to sit with us and talk to us about how do we feel about the world? How do we feel about our accomplishments? What do we think we can do better at? And things like that nature is a great step. So just finding different groups, organizers in these communities and sit down, have these conversations with them. It sheds more light than you think it does. And when we get that attention, it brings more people because they're intrigued. They want to know, okay, what is a peace warrior? I heard them talking about that a lot, but I don't know what it is. Or what is March for Our Lives, Us Kids. I know that they did a tour. I've seen a movie, but what is it? So us being able to sit down and explain that is a step in the right direction. So I'll just say keep doing what you're doing now.
For me, it's the same thing. It's such a pleasure to have this opportunity. And I would just say, if the film inspired you, tell others. Tell others it's on demand, but put it in your social media and think about a way. Our website is uskidsfilm.com, but think about ways as these really important midterms come up of how we can best help the country to utilize the film to have young people show up to vote. If you have ideas about that, get in touch with us through the website, start a group, and have a screening, organize a screening, especially if you're affiliated with any kind of college or university campus or school. We're very open to doing that and doing more of this. So that's what I would say if you're inspired.
So now we'll open it up to Alyssa and Veronica if you guys want to have questions while we have Alex and Kim here. If not, I can think of some as well. So I'm going to take that as a no from Alyssa and Veronica, unless Alyssa looks like you're thinking.
Don't be shy.
I guess growing up, I was sort of sheltered, and I guess I got the impression that everyone else had the answers, and I felt a little lost. Like, how do you go from being a kid who just sort of takes for granted that adults have the answers and sort of take initiative and become a person who sort of takes control of their lives and uses that to make a difference in the world? Is there
Such a great question.
Yeah.
Alex, I'm just wondering, did it take, you had the deaths of, even before your nephew, so many people in your community, their lives taken by something that I'm sure it threw you into both growing up way too fast and doing something about it. But what was that like internally for you without having that kind of, as I'm understanding you, that kind of fire to make you jump, to hurt your feet?
Well, for one, and I thank my high school for this. I got to touch back to the Peace Warrior organization. For me personally, I only joined that because they had, at my school, we had to wear uniforms, and then the Peace Warriors didn't have to. They had a special shirt. So I wanted that shirt. And when I got into that group, I actually got a better understanding of support systems, of having mental breakdowns and being okay with that, just coming back from that, not taking that, converting my L's from losses into lessons. So whenever I felt like I wasn't doing good, I couldn't go anywhere, I went to my Peace Warriors. And as a child, I was lied to a lot. A bunch of, it's like little white lies, anything, but when you get told a bunch of different stories from adults time and time again, it weakens your liability, your loyalty to the understanding of what they're saying. So when when I kept getting told little white lies, I started picking up books. I started looking at stuff myself, picking up information myself, because your eyes don't deceive you.
And I'll just jump in and say that, like finding your tribe, basically. I mean, I'm a lot older than you, but I'm still work at remembering, and it's been hard in COVID, right? Because it's been so isolating that you forget that there is community at times. You forget there is a tribe, there's this, but if you can find your tribe, even if it's not around this issue or an issue, I think it's like taking the pressure off yourself that you have to have, this flagship issue and you have to be an activist with a capital A. Anything you care about, if it's a book, if it's just anything you feel passionate about, find people that you can be passionate with. And I think that magic, like it'll happen. That kind of sense of empowerment and what you want to do with that will follow.
Yeah, the spark definitely will come. And I just want to piggyback off what Kim was saying. Just as you find people that have the same passion as you, the same drive as you, find people that will challenge you too as well. You never want a group full of people, full of yes men. Everything that you say is right. Yes, do this. Yes, that's great. Yes, yes. No, you want people in your group that's going to challenge you too. That's going to say, hey, okay, let's say you do this, but then you get backfall from this. You get backfire. How are you going to handle that? How are you going to handle this pressure? This, that, and the third. What can we do to accommodate you for this? So just finding a balance within your tribe as well.
And find mentors. I'm because I'm into the whole idea of intergenerational alliance, because my feeling right now is we're up against some pretty big forces in this country, and we kind of can't afford to be siloed. Those of us who want similar kinds of vision for like the future of ourselves, our country, we can't afford to be like, okay, there's, older people and younger people, and they're this, or there's, racial divide. Like everybody has to get together. And I think Alex actually says that. He says it so beautifully in the beginning of the Chicago scene, where he says, this can't just be a Parkland thing or Chicago thing. We need everybody, whether it be on this issue or just fighting hate. I mean, that's the line that there's no bridge for me. There are bridges, and then there are places where it's like, no, like there's no bridge to hate. So I think that's the other thing is, maybe it's stretching beyond what even is your normal comfort bubble.
Veronica, did you have any questions before we tie this up?
Well, I'm just reflecting a lot on a lot that's been said. A lot of it I did connect with. I think one of the things that's coming up for me is like when you speak out and you do use your voice, but then you receive flashback, and then you have to take a break, which is, I feel like personally I'm in a situation like that right now. How to sift through the things that I know I'm talented in to get back into it, if that makes any sense.
You got to recharge, right? You're in a
I
recharge
have to recharge, and then so I guess I'm asking, what tips do you guys have for kind of evaluating your own skills, talents, your voice and the way that it was used and suppressed, and then what to do from moving forward, I guess. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, Kim, could you start this one off? I have to run.
Of course. The first thing that sounds cliche is self-care. Like when you feel yourself being stretched, it's really hard to remember that adage, in the plane, like put the oxygen on yourself first. and not feel guilty about it. Like you gotta step back and start doing things that, whatever those things are in your toolbox that regenerate you. And to be around energy that's really self-affirming. When people kind of rip you down, when you're around that energy, which can be so difficult to just say, oh, it's easy to just say, well, just ignore that. But it gets under everybody's skin. I think you've got to really work hard to be around energy in a circle. Like you can narrow in, like, and say, I just kind of want to be around energy of people who respect me, who affirm what I'm doing. And then in terms of assessing your skills, it's like for me, again, all these years later, I try to go back to who I was as a really little kid. I really try to go back into what my real essence was, what that authentic self always was. And sometimes it's, was it curiosity about frogs, in a creek? It doesn't have to be these big, lofty kinds of, am I good at, public speaking, or I'm not good enough? Because that starts to be like this kind of downward cycle. It can be of self-questioning, self-deprecating. It's just like, how do you get in touch with having empathy for that person that you were? Sometimes I think the wisest we ever are at like 7 years old, and it's like, if you get back in touch with who that person was, a lot of times there's the answer. There was one of those books I once read that had an exercise where you wrote to yourself as your 7-year-old. Like, what would that 7-year-old write to you right now to answer that question? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So I'm in a time of reflection, I think. So yeah.
I would say go with your heart. I know I got a lot of backlash on my first return back from Parkland. I was told I was a crisis actor. I was a pawn. I was only being used for the color of my skin. And a lot of those comments were from outsiders, but some of those comments were from friends, were from distant family. But my heart was in it. My heart was saying, this is the right thing to do. Stay here. This is where I need to be. So following your heart for one. And for two, I want to touch back on that. You have to recharge, and you also shouldn't overcharge. So it's okay to take a break, gather yourself back together. But then again, at the same time, it's not okay to overwork yourself. So you need to take breaks, and you should never overwork yourself. When you feel overworked, take that time, relax. Like I said, do what you like to do. For me, cut on some music, put on a pot of pasta, get to cooking. But taking or knowing when you need to take your breaks, and always following and doing everything with your heart. Lead with your heart.
So on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you, Kim, and I guess I'll wait a little bit for Alex to come back to thank him. But a sincere thank you to you, Kim, for bringing this film together and for documenting it all. Because a lot of people, I think we live in the kind of society where people forget with the media cycle the way it is. And for us to just have a chance to really look back on that years afterwards, and just means a lot. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and Alex, thank you as well. I thank you personally, because thank you for the work that you do. I appreciate you and everything you have to say, honestly. Just keep at it. And I hope to speak to both of you soon in the future, maybe.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to share with you guys.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and end it now. thank you again, and thank you, Alyssa and Veronica, for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa, Veronica.
Yes, thank you. Being a part as well.
So we'll see ya, and have a good one out there.
See you anytime.